So today we're going to be talking about rational and irrational numbers. So the difference between rational and irrational numbers. Rational numbers can be written as a fraction, whereas irrational numbers cannot be written as a fraction. So the key word to remember is ratio. Ratio is that key word. So right there, ratio. Ratio, fraction. Ratios and fractions are the same thing. And so these are pretty much all the numbers that you can think of. And then we have irrational. And if you say someone's irrational, they're not for the better lack of word, normal. They're a little bit insane. They're not following the basic rules that you should be. So those cannot be written as a fraction. And then let's talk about the different types of rational numbers. So these are going to be a lot just because there's so many. So first off, fractions. So if you see any type of fraction, it's automatically a rational number because rational numbers can be written as a fraction. An example of a fraction would be 3/4. You all know what fractions are. The next thing is decimals that end, or terminating decimals. So decimals that end. This means that they don't go on forever, they don't have that little ... next to it, they're not repeating. So an example of that would be 2.6. It ends, it has a definitive end. Next type is decimals that repeat. So decimals that repeat. And then you guys have all seen that. Examples would be 2.4 with the bar above it. So if it has a bar, that means it's repeating. Or you can write it as this, 2.444 ... That means that 4 is right there, going on forever and ever and ever. Alright, so we have fractions, we have decimals that end, and then we have decimals that repeat. Those are all rational. And then there are more types. It's integers. And integers are just positive and negative whole numbers. So if that's a little bit difficult for you to understand, positive or negative whole numbers. And the examples would be -4 or 10. Okay, so fractions, decimals that end, decimals that repeat, whole numbers that are positive or negative, and the very last one are perfect squares, and we've all heard this. Perfect squares are squares that you can find a number and multiply it times itself to get whatever's under the radical sign. So the square root of 36, what number times itself gives you 36? 6. So those are perfect squares. That's rational numbers. Now we're going to talk about irrational numbers. And there are only 2 types of irrationals. And the first one's super easy. Non-perfect squares. So this is when you have, let's say, 48. What number times itself gives you 48? Someone says 6. Well, 6 times 6 is 36. Okay, now someone says 7. 7 times 7 is 49, not 48. And then let's try 8, someone says. 8 times 8 is 64. But I guarantee one of you are thinking it's 6 times 8. But are 6 and 8 the same number? No. So, that's a non-perfect square. The last one are decimals that go on forever. Go on forever and never repeat. Go on forever and never repeat. The most common example is pi, or if you need another one, 2.7328 ... It's a decimal that goes on forever, ellipsis, and never repeats, 7328. So let's do some examples real quick. 2.74. Is that rational or irrational? Rational. And why is it irrational? Because it can be written as a fraction. 2.74 can be written as 2 74/100. Or, if you just look at the different types, it is a decimal that ends. Never, doesn't repeat, and just ends. There's no ... Okay? Second example is 3.14152, on and on and on. So that ... means it goes on forever. And does it repeat at all? 14152. No, there's no pattern, no repeating. So it goes on forever and doesn't repeat. That is beep, 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 irrational. And then the very last one we have is negative 2,564. Okay, well, let's see. Is it rational or irrational? Let's go up to our irrationals. Is that a radical sign? No, so that's not even it. Is it a decimal that goes on forever and never repeats? Nope. So it makes it rational. And the type of rational number that it is an integer. It is a negative whole number. 2,564 is a whole number. And it's just negative, so that's okay. So that's rational versus irrational. Just remember, ratio is in rational. So ratio is a fraction. And then when you're irrational, that means you go off the beaten path.